In front of 150 guests at my son's wedding, his bride accused me of stealing. I tested her character by pretending to be really poor for 6 months. After treating me like trash and preventing me from attending the wedding, she planned to have me falsely accused of stealing. With the exception of picking the incorrect victim and stage for her act, her plan was perfect. This is the tale of how a gold digger's avarice ultimately led to her demise, and how a father's love might occasionally need him to teach his child the most difficult lessons. Please leave a comment below and let me know where you're listening from before we get into how Raina Knight wrecked herself with her own lies. Tell me too, is it appropriate for parents to test their kids' relationships, or is that going too far? A person's treatment of people who are unable to assist them is said to be a good indicator of their character. However, what occurs when a millionaire parent poses as impoverished in order to put his prospective daughter-in-law to the test? As I studied financial statistics on my tablet, the morning sun crept through my little Denver kitchen. Even though Cole Hospitality Group made $8 million last quarter from 4 upscale locations, my kitchen still contained Target's entryway coffee maker and furniture from a rummage sale. Jackson showed up adjusting his tie for work at the software company, where he made $85,000 a year, and said, "Morning, Dad. Raina wants dinner this weekend to discuss wedding budget. She's been stressed about costs." I hurriedly closed my business reports and went to the news, saying, "Of course, son, whatever you need." Following Jackson's departure, I withdrew to my office, which serves as the hub of my $8 million business. Victoria Sterling, manager of the Grand Meridian, texted me, "Mr. Cole, the Morrison wedding was perfect. You've built something special." Victoria had been with me for 8 years, progressing from assistant to venue manager for my flagship. I was known to my 45 staff members at the Grand Meridian Riverside Manor Mountain View Lodge and Downtown Event Center as a kind boss who paid above-market wages and remembered birthdays. To my son, however, I was just his father battling with property management tasks. When Jackson took Raina Knight home 6 months ago, the deception started. She had been endearing, complimenting our authentic supper and cozy surroundings. However, Jackson's attitude changed when she answered a work call. Her gaze scanned the simple furnishings with hardly disguised disappointment, yet the smile persisted. In her honey-sweet yet calculating voice, she had continued, "Mr. Cole, Jackson mentioned property management. That must be challenging in today's market." For me, the silence before challenging said it all. This person was taking stock and calculating value in money signs. They had no interest in Jackson's personality. "Promise me, Dawn, when Jackson finds someone, make sure she loves him for who he is, not what we have. Too many people will use our boy's good heart." I recalled my wife's last words as I gazed at Margaret's picture on my desk that evening. Since then, every encounter has supported my conclusion. When Jackson was around, Raina was kind, but when she was left alone, her actual personality showed through. She would roll her eyes when she thought no one was watching, make subtle remarks about the family's limitations, and put further pressure on Jackson to keep his distance from his struggling father. Margaret had been correct. When others thought you had nothing to give, your character came to the fore. I took financial statements out of my desk drawer. The Cole Hospitality Group was doing quite well. Without blinking, I could provide Jackson and Raina with the wedding of their dreams. Rather, I decided to stay in the shadows and observe, wait, and let Raina to show her true self. She had become more assertive during our most recent family meal. I told her that things were tight, but she hadn't smiled yet. "Jackson, honey, maybe your father could contribute something small to the wedding. Even modest families usually help." Over the phone, I later overheard her say, "His dad is basically broke. It's embarrassing. My family will think Jackson comes from nothing." Although the remarks hurt, they supported my suspicions. Disappointed by what she saw as our family's lack of wealth, Raina Knight was content to settle for my son rather than marry him. No matter how painful it got, the exam would go on. After decades of commercial deals, I had learned to read people and had built my empire from nothing. Every day, Raina's mask came off more and more, exposing the gold digger behind the charming exterior. Victoria called regarding venue reservations when my phone rang. I took another look at Margaret's picture while I responded. This complex lie would make sense to her. Sometimes you have to be willing to play the bad guy in their story in order to protect the people you care about. Eventually, the truth would come out. It did every time. When it occurred, Raina Knight would find that the location where she intended to celebrate her victory was owned by the poor father she had disregarded. Raina Knight rehearsed her act 4 months before to the wedding. She brought handmade cookies, whispered beautiful affirmations, and cuddled up against Jackson's shoulder during movie nights at his apartment. She was the epitome of devotion. Her words would be, "I love you for exactly who you are," and she would kiss his cheek. Not everyone finds a man with such integrity. She would give me a warm welcome whenever I went. "Hi, Dad. How was your day? You work so hard." However, masks fell off when their users believed no one significant was looking. When Jackson took a work call during family dinner, the first crack developed. Raina's eyes scanned our small dining areas like an appraiser at an estate sale, but her smile stayed fixed. She said, "This furniture is vintage," in a tone that implied it was useless. "Margaret picked most pieces out," I discreetly answered. "My wife had an eye for character." Raina laughed sharply. "Character?" Examining her manicured nails, she said, "That's one way to put it. Jackson really should update his living situation. Image matters in his industry." Her attitude immediately changed when Jackson came back. "Your father was telling me about your mother's wonderful taste," she said. "Such beautiful memories. If I hadn't spent 30 years reading business people, the transition would have been smooth." More truth was revealed during the wedding planning process. Raina became upset at the bridal boutique when the cost of the dresses increased beyond Jackson's means. She whispered, "Other fathers contribute significantly," as I looked at veils. "It's traditional, expected. Dad's doing his best, Raina. Times are tough." "Tough? My friend Jessica's father paid everything, venue flowers, honeymoon. That's what real fathers do." I saw the tension in my son's shoulders as he felt inadequate. All of my instincts told me to stop the act, take out my platinum card, and give my son back his trust. Rather, I walked up in silence. "I'm sorry I can't do more." Raina had a very narrow smile. "Of course, Mr. Cole. We understand your limitations." She lost her temper during venue tours. Jackson cornered me close to the centerpiece displays as she talked to coordinators. "This family has no class," she said, her facade totally thrown apart. "Your poverty reflects badly on Jackson's image. My family has standards." Calmly, "I'm sure they do," I answered. With malicious gleams in her eyes, she said, "You have no idea what it's like explaining why my fiancé's father can't afford a decent suit. It's embarrassing." Jackson's return brought about an immediate metamorphosis. "This venue is perfect, honey. Your father was saying how lovely everything looks. Years of experience made the lies come so naturally." I experimented with subtly alerting Jackson during lunch. "Son, you can judge someone's character by how they treat people who can't help them." Jackson appeared perplexed. "What do you mean?" "Watch how Raina interacts with waiters' clerks, people she considers beneath notice." The defensive edge strengthened his voice as he said, "Dad, Raina is wonderful to everyone. She volunteers, donates to charity." "I think you're being unfair." I said, "Perhaps you're right," as my worries grew. "I heard Raina's phone call that night. It was probably her mother. The wedding will be beautiful despite his family's limitations," she said as she paced during Jackson's shower. "Once married, I can distance Jackson from his father's influence. Really for the best." With a heavy heart, I silently withdrew, realizing that my son was not susceptible to trickery. That night, Margaret's picture appeared suspiciously vigilant. Was it cruel to keep up this charade, or was I shielding Jackson against manipulation for the rest of his life? The test would go on. Eventually, the truth came to light, and I wanted Jackson to understand Raina Knight's true identity. Every day her mask came off, exposing the cunning woman behind the charming exterior. She would soon commit a mistake so significant that even Jackson, who was blind to love, would be unable to ignore it. I simply needed a bit more patience. Raina Knight felt she had had enough of acting 2 weeks prior to the wedding. When she arrived at our little home, Jackson was at work, and her high-end heels clicked on weathered porch boards like a countdown to conflict. She didn't wait for a friendly greeting. She pushed past me into the living room and declared, "We need to discuss the wedding." No illusion of friendliness remained. This was the icy cunning and vicious Raina exposed. "Of course. Please sit down. I'll stand." She stood next to the window, lathering herself up like a prosecutor. We exchanged the words, "You cannot come to our ceremony." I had anticipated a lot, but not being completely barred from my son's wedding. Raina laughed as sharply as glass. "I see. May I ask why?" With increasing confidence, she started to pace and said, "My family has certain standards, Mr. Cole. Your financial situation would embarrass everyone involved. Do you know what it's like explaining to my parents Why my fiance's father can't afford a decent wedding contribution? They're asking questions I can't answer without humiliating Jackson. I understand your concerns, but I'm afraid I can't agree to that. My cool defiance stopped her in her tracks. It was obvious that she had anticipated instant compliance. "Excuse me," she said in a dangerously sharp tone. "This is my son's wedding, Raina. I've been planning to attend since the day he proposed. What right do you have to ban me?" Her expression was angry. "What right I'm his wife, I'm protecting our future from your embarrassing poverty." "You're not his wife yet," I responded calmly. She burst out of her mask and said, "And even when you are, you don't get to decide my relationship with my son." "We'll see about that," she said. "Jackson will pick me over you. In fact, he has already done so. He acknowledges that you are a disgrace." "Then let Jackson tell me himself." "All right," she said, grabbing her purse and making her way to the door. She stopped at the door, her smile chilly and predatory, and said, "But don't think this is over, Mr. Cole. If you insist on showing up and humiliating us, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. You want to come to our wedding?" "Fine. Come. But I guarantee you'll wish you'd stayed home. I'll make sure your presence at our wedding becomes the most regrettable decision you've ever made." The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with the echo of her threats and my growing conviction that Raina Knight was planning something far worse than simple exclusion. I kept thinking about her final statement. She would make sure that everyone understood exactly what kind of man I was. This time the goal was to publicly destroy me in front of everyone who mattered, not to save Jackson's reputation. Raina was going to make me regret not staying at my son's wedding, which I had refused to do. Whatever she had in mind would be humiliating public and made to make sure I would never again attempt to thwart her intentions. She had just declared war on someone who had created an empire out of nothing, which was a grave error. I had to deal with tough rivals, shrewd negotiations, and hostile takeovers. A pampered young lady, planning retaliation, was unaware of the challenges she faced. 2 weeks remained till the wedding. She has plenty of time to organize her attack, and I have plenty of time to have my defenses ready. Allow her to enter. I would be prepared. A week prior to the wedding, Raina Knight sat in her parents' opulent living room and meticulously laid out her strategy. She said, "Daddy, I need your help with a problem," in a sweetly deceptive voice that had been tricking Jackson for months. From his newspaper, Richard Knight raised his head. "What kind of problem, sweetheart?" "Jackson's father. He's become difficult." With curiosity, Patricia put down her coffee cup. The Knights recognized the value of controlling the perception of the family. "Difficult how?" Raina said in a tone of professional contempt. "He's embarrassingly poor. Shabby house, no money, completely inappropriate for our standards." I tried to ban him from the wedding, but he refused. Had the audacity to ask what right I had to exclude him. She leaned forward in a plot. "Since he insists on coming, I need him completely discredited. Something ensuring Jackson never looks to his father again." Richard scowled. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Calmly, Raina declared, "I'm going to steal money from the wedding gift table, then publicly accuse him of theft." There was silence in the room. Instead of fright, Patricia's eyes widened with calculated interest. Richard said, "That's quite dramatic," slowly. "It's perfect. Everyone knows he's desperate for money. When cash goes missing, and I point fingers at him, who will they believe, the respected bride or the pathetic father who couldn't contribute to his son's wedding?" Patricia gave a nod of approval. "It would solve the problem permanently." "But I need witnesses," stated Raina. "People backing my story, making it believable." She turned to face her parents. "I need you both there when I make the accusation. Act shocked. Supportive help sell the narrative." Patricia and Richard looked at each other. Although their daughter's plan was brutal, it would preserve the family's name and ensure that their son-in-law was kept in a suitable distance. Patricia responded, "We'll do it," with firmness. "Family protects family." "One more thing," says Raina, grinning. "The money I take, we split 3 ways. Consider it compensation for your performance." Champagne and handshakes cemented the plot. Jackson and I were sitting at dinner together at the time, and none of us realized the trap that was being laid. Jackson cut his steak and remarked, "Dad, Raina seems really stressed about the wedding." "She's been acting strange lately." Sensing something significant, I looked up. "Strange how?" "Just intense. Like she's planning something big beyond just the ceremony." He laughed. "Maybe it's normal bride nerves. She keeps talking about making sure everything's perfect, that nothing goes wrong." If only he realized how accurate his assessment of her big-picture planning was. Jackson went on cautiously. She mentioned you two had some disagreement about the guest list. I said in a neutral tone, we talked about it. I believe we worked it out. His smile was sincere and full of trust. Good. I want everyone I love there on my wedding day. Raina just wants everything to be special. She's been talking about surprises, making sure the day is unforgettable. I didn't miss the irony. Though not in the manner Jackson had envisioned, Raina was in fact intending to make the day one to remember. She's lucky to have you, I muttered. I'm the lucky one. Raina could have married anyone, but she chose me. Raina called her parents later that night to complete the arrangements. She clarified over the speaker, the gift table will be near the entrance. During ceremony, when everyone's distracted, I'll take exactly $1,200. Significant, but not emptying the table. Richard questioned, what's our cue? I'll approach you during reception looking distressed. I'll whisper that money's missing that I saw Arden near the table earlier. You act shocked, suggest we confront him publicly. Patricia's voice was icy with eagerness. And then I destroy him in front of everyone who matters. His reputation, his relationship with Jackson, his entire pathetic existence, gone. It was a perfect strategy. Raina Knight would have everything in less than a week. A wealthy husband, total control over his family relationships, and the satisfaction of defeating the man who had dared to challenge her. All she needed to do was wait for the ideal opportunity to set her trap. She was unaware that her flawless plan had a fatal flaw. She had picked the incorrect location for her performance. Denver had perfect weather on Saturday morning, clear skies, and a gentle breeze, the kind of day Raina must have hoped for. Final preparations were being made for the most anticipated event of the season at Colorado's top wedding venue, the Grand Meridian. I parked my small automobile in the circular drive around 10 o'clock. Ironically, 2 hours prior to the ceremony, I was prohibited from going to my own son's wedding at the exact house I had constructed from the ground up 8 years prior. Once a dilapidated estate, I had turned it into one of Denver's most popular destinations. I heard a familiar voice as I stepped outside. My 8-year trusted manager, Victoria Sterling, rushed across the marble hall, her elegance ebbing. Mr. Cole, why have you come here today? The wedding of my son, I replied softly, even though I wasn't asked. Her features hardened from shock to indignation. Expelled from your own location. It's difficult. The bride thinks it would be unsuitable for me to be there. Unsuitable loyalty weighed heavily in her tone. You are the most honorable man I have ever met, sir. My mother's cancer treatments were covered by you. For 8 years, you never missed an employee's birthday. Others gathered, including James from security, Elena from floral, and Marcus from catering. News of their boss's exclusion from his son's wedding traveled swiftly. This is ridiculous, Marcus firmly stated. When my daughter needed surgery, you gave me a loan with no paperwork and no interest. Elena gave a nod. When my father was dying, you took my whole family by plane from Mexico. Everything was paid for by you. They were very devoted. I held up my hand. Thank you, but the focus of today is Jackson and Raina. It is our responsibility to make their day ideal. Victoria said, of course, sir, but it was obvious that her protective nature was in play. But if someone dares to treat you disrespectfully, just act professionally. All I ask is that. The venue came alive as the morning wore on. The ballroom was transformed into a verdant garden by florists. 150 people were catered for. As the photographer assessed the light, the quartet adjusted their instruments. Like a queen claiming her throne, Raina arrived at 11:30 in her expensive gown, sweeping in from a white Bentley. Victoria came politely. Ms. Everything is prepared, Knight. Do you require anything? Raina hardly gave her a look. Just carry out your duties. With the aid, I don't have time for small talk. The abuse spread among the employees in the vicinity. No one had ever spoken with such contempt in all the years they had hosted demanding clients. Of course, ma'am, Victoria said coolly, trying to hide her rage. Raina proceeded with her tour, giving instructions, abruptly critiquing minute details that had taken hours, and treating experts like servants. She didn't realize she was offending the same people who could ruin her scheme. She pointed to a location close to the entrance that was immediately in front of multiple security cameras and said, That's where the gift table goes. Ensure that it is conveniently available throughout the ceremony. With her eye automatically evaluating camera coverage, Victoria took notice of the selection. 12 HD cameras were installed in the Grand Meridian. something I had demanded following a heist at a rival venue years prior. "Ma'am, anything else?" Raina said, "Just move out of my way," and strode to the bridal suite upstairs. Victoria's eyes were alert when she turned to face the team after leaving. "Pay close attention. We are protecting Mr. Cole today. I have no idea what she is planning, but she will not get away with treating him disrespectfully." All of the employees nodded together. They have dealt with everything from corporate problems to celebrity meltdowns for years. However, this was not like the others. This was a case of family members protecting one another. Guests started showing up for the ceremony at 1 o'clock by midday. Quickly, the gift table was laden with elaborate parcels, substantial sums of money, and the very treasure Raina had been relying on. Everything for her ideal crime was coming together. Unbeknownst to her, she had decided to execute her plan in the one location where every single person would be positioned between her and the man she wished to destroy. She laid the trap, but not in the way she had planned. I watched from the rear of the venue as my son stood at the altar anticipating his bride as the ceremony got underway at precisely 1 o'clock. Jackson looked dapper in his tuxedo, anxious but content despite everything. Even though it was still my boy's wedding day, I briefly forgot how painful it was to be left out. Raina looked like the ideal bride as she made her dramatic entry in a flowing white gown. With cameras blazing, the 150 guests stood up to record what they thought would be the start of a fairy tale. I wish they were aware of what I knew. During the ceremony, I observed Raina's parents taking up positions close to the gift table. Patricia and Richard Knight played the part of proud in-laws to perfection, looking dapper in their formal wear. Nobody had any suspicions that they were involved in their daughter's plot. All eyes were on the pair at the altar as the officiant started the customary vows. This was the ideal diversion, just what Raina had been hoping for. I was standing by the doorway watching her parents glance at each other. Patricia glanced at her watch before giving her husband a barely noticeable nod. They had given the signal. I noticed activity close to the gift table during the ring exchange when all of the guests were engrossed in the beautiful moment. Raina claimed she needed to change her dress after she had inadvertently drifted away from the altar during a prayer. While Jackson stayed focused on the wedding, the bridesmaids filled in for her. She approached the gift table with the assurance of someone who should have been there, moving with practiced precision. With the dexterity of a seasoned burglar, her fingers swiftly sorted through the envelopes, picking out the thickest ones. She took care to leave just enough of the table untouched, so that the theft would be noticeable but not immediately apparent. As she grabbed money from envelope after envelope, I tallied in silence. 900, 600, 300, and 100. She was getting close to the $1,200 she had intended to steal based on my estimation. Victoria was watching from the security office, filming everything on the venue's high-definition camera system, but Raina was unaware of this. Every action, every pilfered money, and every calculating expression were being meticulously documented from a variety of perspectives. She was able to sneak back to the altar in time for the kiss, as the officiant declared Jackson and Raina husband and wife. Unaware that a crime had just been committed during their celebration, the crowd exploded in applause. With a triumphant smile that had nothing to do with marrying my son, Raina and the newlyweds walked back down the aisle together. As they went by, her icy, predatory smile drew my attention. She believed she had triumphed. I saw Raina carry out the second half of her plan as we made our way to the reception. In what seemed to be a tearful family moment, she went over to her parents beside the gift table and gave them an embrace. However, I saw the swift transfer of the pilfered money going from her hands to her mother's pocketbook in a gesture that was passed off as love. Patricia Knight secured the evidence of their crime while grinning brightly at well-wishers. Unaware that the security cameras I had personally set were recording their every move, Richard proudly stroked his daughter's shoulder. Victoria texted me on my phone saying everything captured, multiple angles, crystal clear footage. Ready when you are, Mr. Cole. I glanced around the reception area, which was already crowded with people sipping cocktails and wishing the happy couple well. They had come to celebrate new beginnings and love. They were unaware that a criminal scheme was going to be exposed. Playing the part of the blushing bride to perfection, Raina was going about taking compliments with kind smiles. She was unaware that her well-planned world would collapse around her in a matter of minutes. The evidence was protected. It was time to spring the trap. Waiting for the right time to tell the truth was all that was left. I looked at my watch. Raina's reign as the naive bride was coming to an end, but the festivities had only just started. She had decided to carry out her crime at my location in front of my devoted staff and beneath my surveillance cameras. She had underestimated the man she had written off as a pitiful loser, and now she had to deal with the fallout. Raina made her move while the reception was in full swing. Guests laughed, drank, and danced, celebrating what they thought was the perfect wedding. Despite everything I knew, I tried to enjoy a moment of peace as I watched my son Jackson dance with his new wife from the back of the room. Then I saw Raina slip away. She approached her parents with a look of theatrical distress, whispering urgently. Her father's face darkened in feigned outrage. Her mother clutched her chest in pretend shock. The performance had begun. Moments later, Raina stepped into the center of the ballroom, her parents flanking her like actors in a stage drama. "Excuse me, everyone," she called out, her voice trembling with false emotion. "I need your attention, please." The music stopped. Conversations halted. 150 guests turned to the bride, expecting an announcement. "I'm so sorry to interrupt our celebration," she began, voice breaking for effect. "But something terrible has happened, and I can't stay silent." Then she pointed directly at me. "This man has stolen money from your generous wedding gifts." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Faces turned toward me, some shocked, others skeptical, many already judging. A few guests lifted their phones, eager to film the scene. I saw him near the gift table during the ceremony. Raina continued, her tone rising with feigned indignation. When we counted afterward, over $1,000 was missing. He took advantage of our trust and generosity. Jackson stepped forward, pale and shaken. "Raina, what are you talking about? Dad would never." "Your father is desperate, Jackson," she interrupted, dripping with mock pity. "Look at how he lives. This is what poverty drives people to." Murmurs spread. Some guests began dialing security. Fingers pointed in my direction. Then from the side of the room, Victoria Sterling emerged, her professional calm replaced by protective fury. "Ladies and gentlemen, please stop," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. "There's something you all need to know." She turned toward me with quiet respect. "The man you're accusing is Mr. Arden Cole, owner of this venue, and 3 others. He's been my employer for 8 years. He's the most honest, generous man I've ever known." The tension shifted instantly. Shock replaced suspicion. Raina's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she stammered. "He's poor. He can't even afford." Victoria cut her off. "He can afford anything he wants. Mr. Cole owns Cole Hospitality Group. The Grand Meridian is his flagship property." As if on cue, members of the staff surrounded me. James from security, Elena from floral design, Marcus from catering, all showing quiet respect. "Mr. Cole, are you all right?" Marcus said loudly. "This is outrageous." Victoria nodded to the sound technician, who instantly activated the big screens around the ballroom. "Let's see who really stole your gifts," she said firmly. Footage from the venue's security cameras appeared. The timestamp matched the ceremony. There, in crystal clarity, Raina could be seen rifling through envelopes at the gift table, counting cash and tucking the bills into her gown. The next clip showed her embracing her parents, an embrace that included a quick handoff, and Patricia slipping the stolen money into her purse. "Multiple cameras, multiple angles," Victoria announced, all showing Ms. Knight stealing $1, $200 and handing it to her parents. The crowd erupted. Guests shouted for the police phones raised to record the footage. Raina froze, her flawless mask collapsing, while her parents looked ready to sink into the floor. Jackson's face was pure devastation. He stared at his bride, now revealed as a liar and thief, with disbelief and heartbreak. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. The fallout was swift and undeniable. Within minutes, hotel security detained Raina and her parents as guests called the police. Surveillance footage showed Patricia's purse containing the stolen $200 proof of their scheme. Raina's dream wedding had turned into a public disgrace. Videos were already flooding social media, ensuring her humiliation would be permanent. But my concern wasn't her downfall. It was my son standing in the chaos, looking utterly shattered. Dad, Jackson whispered, barely audible. "You own this place. All 4 venues." "I do, son." His eyes filled with tears. "But the house, the furniture, how you live. Why didn't you tell me?" I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because your mother made me promise before she died. Make sure whoever Jackson marries loves him for who he is, not what we have." Realization dawned on his face. "You were testing her." "I was protecting you," I said, watching as the police led Raina away in handcuffs. "I've seen too many good men destroyed by women chasing money. Your mother was right to worry." "I'm so sorry, Dad. The things she said about you, how she treated you, I should have listened." You were in love. Love blinds us sometimes. That's why family looks out for us. Victoria approached. Mr. Cole, the police want a statement, but I told them you needed time with your son first. Thank you, Victoria, I said, for everything. Your family, sir. We protect family. Jackson and I found a quiet corner amid the commotion. All those months, he said, shaking his head. You let her insult you, call you a failure. Why didn't you just tell me the truth? Because it had to come from her actions, not my words. If I'd called her a gold digger, you would have thought I was controlling. You needed to see her true nature yourself. But it must have hurt watching me choose her over you. I thought of Margaret's picture, her final words echoing. Sometimes protecting the people we love means letting them think we're the villain. Your mother understood that kind of love. I can't believe I married her. The marriage can be annulled. Fraud is grounds for that. But more importantly, you learned something about character and loyalty. What's that? You can judge a person by how they treat those who can't help them. Raina showed you exactly who she was. You just had to be ready to see it. In the following weeks, the consequences arrived. Raina and her parents were charged with theft and conspiracy. The marriage was annulled within a month. Their names became synonymous with scandal, shutting them out of Denver's social scene forever. But the real victory wasn't their punishment. It was the reconciliation between my son and me. Over dinner weeks later, Jackson said, Now I understand why you and Mom built your wealth quietly. It's not about money. It's about finding people who love you without it. Your mother was wise, I replied. She knew the difference between love and opportunism. Will you teach me about the business and about people? I smiled, feeling Margaret's presence. I'd be honored, son. The test had been painful, but necessary. Jackson was wiser now, ready to recognize real love, the kind that doesn't measure status or count money, and that I realized was worth more than everything I owned. Our religion may occasionally be put to the test in unexpected ways by the people we love the most. My experience serves as a reminder that betrayal stories like these are about more than money or manipulation. They are about having the guts to stand up for what's right when everything else seems gone. When we need it most, God has a way of showing us people's true selves, as my grandfather always taught me. Sometimes the Lord lets us experience betrayal so we can learn about our own strength. The Lord works in mysterious ways. My experience demonstrates that sometimes being willing to play the villain is necessary to safeguard the people we care about. We learn from these tales of betrayal that true love necessitates limits rather than unrelenting support. Even when we feel alone and abandoned, God watches everything according to my grandfather's stories from my early years. The divine wisdom that leads us through our worst situations is reflected in my faith in doing the right thing, even when my own kid turned against me. The timing of the Almighty is impeccable. The time was right for Raina's plot to come to light. Grandpa's stories that demonstrate how God can mend what is irreparably damaged are the most impactful. Through hardships, my friendship with Jackson was not only patched up but strengthened. These tales of betrayal serve as a reminder that sometimes, in order to discover what is true, we must let go of everything that is untrue. The lesson here is profound. When genuine love is based on respect and honesty, it endures through any storm. Painful revelations that eventually result in true healing and wisdom are frequently a part of God's plan. Which of your own grandfather's tales have inspired you to speak up for what's right? For more motivational tales that show us how faith and bravery can turn our worst setbacks into our greatest triumphs, please leave your thoughts in the comments section below and remember to subscribe to our channel.